falls to a man named Callimachus. He is the polemarch. It's a ceremonial position in the Athenian army. Miltiades makes an impassioned case to Callimachus, saying, "It's up to you whether Athens is reduced to slavery or rises to become the greatest of all the Greek city-states." He explains that failure to fight now will shatter the democracy along factional lines and make them easy prey for the Persians. Callimachus is convinced, and he votes to attack.
Miltiades gets his war. He leads the entire Athenian army, roughly 10,000 strong, 26 miles east to the plains of Marathon. The odds are overwhelmingly against Miltiades. The Persian force is colossal. More than twice the Athenian size. 20,000 infantry, 3,000 archers, 2,000 cavalry.
Miltiades takes a look at the situation and realizes immediately he's severely outnumbered. He's not only outnumbered, he's outgunned in the sense that there are fairly substantial archer and cavalry contingents.
Even if the Athenians can hold back the Persian infantry, they have no way to counter the Persian war horses. It's a massive mismatch.
Cavalry is one of the keys to Persian military success. They were one of the first armies to fully integrate horses and heavy infantry for a devastating 1-2 punch, and funnel their enemies into the chomping jaws of their main infantry lines.
Miltiades is outnumbered and outgunned. The Athenians have never faced a force like this before. But they have cut their teeth on some of the greatest warriors of the ancient world. For centuries, these two Greek city-states shed each other's blood. But 50 years before Miltiades faces the Persians, a conflict erupts between the Greek neighbors that will ultimately lead to the Battle of Marathon. It's 540 BC, 50 years before the Battle of Marathon. Two Greek city-states, Athens and Sparta, attack each other on the open battlefield.
The rivalry between Athens and Sparta is kind of like Michigan versus Ohio State, except with spears. They constantly seek any advantage they can over one another. While most of their battles are, provincial squabbles, one of them gets the Persians involved and eventually leads to the Battle of Marathon.
So, the First Persian War was started by Darius in 490 BC. The Persians invaded by sea, and when they made landfall at Marathon, they were surprised by the Athenian defenders led by Miltiades. Although the Greeks were outnumbered, they still won the battle and forced the Persians back into their boats and back to Persia. The Greek messenger, Phidippides, ran the 26 miles from Marathon to Athens with news of the victory. On arrival in Athens, he collapsed and died. But we celebrate his achievement today by running the 26-mile marathon race. After the crisis was over, Themistocles persuaded the Athenians that there needed a stronger navy to protect against an invasion from the sea. So Athens built new ships. Ten years later, Darius' son, Xerxes, had become emperor of Persia. He wanted to avenge his father's defeat at Marathon and conquer Greece. This was the war that was portrayed in the movie 300. The key battle was at Thermopylae Pass, where about 7,000, not 300, Athenians and Spartans held off the might of the Persian army, upwards of 200,000, for 2 days. They fought to the last man, and as a result of their actions, Athens was saved.
In the narrow Thermopylae Pass in northern Greece, 7,000 ancient Greek soldiers await an onslaught of epic proportions. They will soon face the largest fighting force ever assembled at the time. Nearly 300,000 soldiers of the mighty Persian Empire. Leading the Greeks are 300 of the most ferocious warriors of the ancient world, the Spartans.
The 300 Spartans were the Delta Force of the ancient world. Their job was to hold that pass or to die trying.
For centuries, military scholars have lionized the Spartans for their courage, honor, and sacrifice at Thermopylae. For none of them would leave the pass alive.
The Battle of Thermopylae is one of the most famous last stands in history. It's like the Alamo of the ancient world.
But Thermopylae will also be remembered as the battle that would determine the course of Western civilization and the fate of democracy. In this pass, few fight against many, and 300 courageous warriors make their last stand. .480 BC, King Xerxes, ruler of the mighty Persian Empire, arrives in northeastern Greece. Xerxes leads the Persian war machine, the largest fighting force ever assembled in the ancient world.
The Persian army was the largest and most sophisticated army in the world for its day. It could have routinely put 100,000 men field forces into a battle at any given time.
But for this invasion, Xerxes is believed to have mustered an even greater number of soldiers. Modern estimates gauge the army at about 300,000 strong. But some believe the number might have been as high as 2 million, similar to the number of total soldiers that fought at Normandy on D-Day.
This is the largest army that any Greek alive would have ever seen pass through his country.
A fleet of about 1,000 warships escorts the massive land army. The Persian Empire is enormous. Its borders extend from the Indus River in India to the Nile River in Egypt.
It was by far the largest empire that the ancient world had ever seen, and it disposed of enormous amounts of wealth.
For 5 years, Xerxes uses that wealth to assemble soldiers, build ships, and buy supplies and food for his invasion of Greece. His intention is to burn the Greek city-state of Athens to the ground.
You have to stop and think of the incredible differences in size of the two adversaries. First, you have Greece with a population of about 500,000 to 600,000. It's essentially nothing on the world stage. It's a backwater, almost a non-entity. Now, compare that to the Persian Empire, which consisted of millions and millions of different people, and was literally the largest empire in the world at the time. It would be like every state in the United States ganging up on Cuba, for example.
Some historians believe that Xerxes was attempting to conquer Athens to expand his empire to the west. But others believe that the invasion of Greece was a punitive expedition to punish Athens for supporting a rebellion against Persia 25 years earlier.
Whatever the reasons for Xerxes' attack, this invasion comes at a crucial point in the history of Athens. The democracy, one of the fundamental foundations of Western civilization, is very young. And this invasion threatens to kill it in its infancy.
Xerxes assembles his army in the Persian province of Lydia, or modern-day Turkey, and marches 850 miles around the Aegean Sea to Greece. In August of 480 BC, he reaches a narrow pass. This is Thermopylae, the historic location where the Greeks have staged their defense and where the three-day battle will unfold. Most believe the pass at the time is only some 200 yards at its widest. On the south side of the pass is Mount Koleodromos, nearly 5,000 feet tall, The base of the mountain is about 300 feet of sheer vertical cliff. To the north of the pass is another cliff looming over the Aegean Sea.
Geographically, Thermopylae is a natural choke point between the north of Greece and the mainland in the south, and where the main cities are. And there was no other way to get from the north to the south. So Leonidas and the Spartans and all of the Greeks knew that this was the one place where a stand could be made.
Xerxes sends a scout into the pass to see what lies in the way of Persia's advance toward Athens. The scout discovers 7,000 Greek soldiers blocking the east end of the pass. The Persians outnumber the Greeks nearly 50 to 1. Despite their inferior numbers, however, the Greeks have positioned themselves so that they might be able to withstand the Persian attack. In a brilliant strategic move, the Greeks have taken away the Persian numerical advantage by choosing Thermopylae as the battlefield.
If you look at the Battle of Thermopylae from kind of an overhead view, what you see is a narrow pass, all right, in which the ground army has to come. And that plays to the Greek advantage because you can use a small amount of men to narrow the front and put up a good, significant defense.
What a pass does is reduce the strength of an army. It turns its strength into a weakness. Its size becomes a liability because you have to funnel everyone through the pass. So fewer men with greater flexibility can defend against larger numbers of men.
The Greek fighting force is one that has never before been seen, for it is the first time in their long history that the Greeks fight together instead of against each other. Greece at this time is not yet a unified country. It is a collection of small city-states that often battle each other for regional supremacy. The largest of the city-states, Athens and Sparta, are notoriously bitter rivals. But at Thermopylae, they set aside their differences and join together to fight the common Persian enemy. Leading the entire Greek coalition army is the great Spartan king and future hero of Thermopylae, Leonidas.
Leonidas was one of the two kings of Sparta, and he was the man who was chosen by the allied Greeks, by all the city-states, to go and hold the pass at Thermopylae. He was the one who chose the troops who would go and who was the general in charge of it. His job was to stand and fight to the death.
The last stand at Thermopylae will catapult Leonidas into legend. From this time on, every Greek citizen will know his name and what he and the 300 Spartans did at Thermopylae. A Persian advisor informed Xerxes of the Spartan-led defense. The exchange is described by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus in his work The Histories, considered to be one of the earliest reports on Thermopylae.
Listen to me.
These men here have come to fight with us for the pass and are making themselves ready in the ways they need to. If you can trample these men down and subdue the army that remains behind in Sparta, there exists no tribe of men, O king, who would raise their hands against you.
But Xerxes is not only relying on his army to defeat Leonidas and the Spartan-led land defense. Off the coast of Thermopylae, in a narrow waterway called the Artemisium Strait, the Persian navy waits. They will attempt to sail behind Leonidas's army and surround him.
If the Persian navy gets through Artemisium, then what happens is, as Xerxes' main force slams into you in the front, the land troops behind you and come up and catch you in a pincer movement. So in order to stand at Thermopylae, you have got to stop the Persian